Now, while Santa made sure that you were wrecking the halls to get that last-minute game that came out the week or couple weeks before Christmas, he was also making sure that you would wreck the halls for another very simple reason. Santa sometimes likes to release video game systems themselves during the holiday season. Oh, and get this, they tell you that they're in limited supply. Nothing's worse than destroying the malls trying to find your favorite game store or Walmart or Target to see if they have the damn system. And half the time they didn't, because they would sell out in minutes because they only had a couple to hand out. And now you're left there yelling at some kid who has no clue of what's going on, berating store employees because they don't know when their next shipment is going to get in, and it's your fault that you don't have a million systems for them to sell. Working in retail, I can tell you, I've heard all the crazy excuses you can think of, from nobody told me I had to be here at a certain time to get this, and the only reason why they're there and they want it so bad is so their bratty ass kids would shut the fuck up about wanting the damn system. Because nothing's worse than hearing on Christmas of some ungrateful little asshole going, "You didn't get me my system, I hate you." It's like, fuck you, go out in the cold, little Johnny, see if you freeze your balls off. Maybe then you'll have some appreciation. October 26th, 2000, the PlayStation 2 in all of its masses finally was released here in the United States after being released in March in Japan of the same year. This system set the bar and set the record, and essentially that date was the end of the Sega Dreamcast. The Dreamcast had a nice ride, but once the PlayStation 2 was launched in North America, forget about it. Cancel Christmas, kitchens closed. This system was the Dreamcast killer and essentially rewrote the history of what video games would become. This system was the most selling system out of all. And the sad thing is, for that Christmas year, it was in such high demand that you were lucky to get your hands on one of these things. One of the most personal stories I have about this is I was helping someone out in a game store. They were so afraid to bring these PlayStation 2s through the mall because they had a store in the mall. We had to go get them from FedEx, and we literally filled up garbage cans of boxes of just PlayStation 2s and wheeled them to his store. We were so afraid we were going to get jumped, and this was during the day. And not only that, he had a huge PlayStation launch event. So the extra PlayStation 2s that he held so that he could sell them throughout the holiday season, because he knew he wasn't going to get another shipment in stock. And that's how high demand these things were, that he wasn't going to get another one. So he had to hold off even from October to at least last them through the holiday season. What made the PlayStation 2 essentially blow everything else out of the water? It launched at $300. DVD players were $300. This system kicked off DVDs. This was everything all in one, and it was for a great price. It cost you the same amount to get a PlayStation 2 as was a DVD player, and that just blew the doors wide open. So you had broad spectrum of people. This was my very first DVD player, and from talking to people, it also was their first one as well. And it was also the first system that really utilized all of its expansion slots and just didn't make them there saying, oh, we wanted to do this, but we never got around to it, so they eventually took them out. They utilized their expansion slot. We were able to add in the network adapter, and you could actually hook up a hard drive, a Linux kit, and use it as a real computer. There was limited game support for the hard drive. Final Fantasy XI was the only game that I really know of that you needed the hard drive aside from the Linux kit. Like, you couldn't play the game without it. You also had Resident Evil Outbreak and a few other games that installed the files in there to make the game load faster. It was a feature that PlayStation phased out, and they ended up making the slimline ones, but they kept the modem and they kept the Ethernet, the network adapter built into it in the slim one. And they eventually phased out the modem in itself in the latest revision that they made, or should I say the last revision that they made in, I believe, 2010. This system, they sold it for 13 years. Essentially, the PlayStation 2, you witnessed the beginning, or should I say the hype of dial-up and the beginning of high-speed internet, to basically phasing out dial-up altogether and only high-speed internet. It was, when you look back at it, it was just an amazing transition. Within 13 years, they went from, you could have both, and a lot of people were on dial-up in 2000. Then by the time 2010, 2013 obviously rolled around, it was all high-speed internet. There was really no dial-up left. And that's just all on the hardware side of it. On the game side of it, listen, if you had a PlayStation 2 or have a PlayStation 2, you know the game side of it catalog is massive, with some of the best titles ever to be released on any video game console. I mean, you got Silent Hill, you got Final Fantasy X, 12. Yeah, I mean, you have, that's just to name a few. That's just off the top of my head what I can think about. There are so many other great games that have came from this system that I can't even fathom how many great games are on there, and that's the reason why it sold so well. That's also another reason why PlayStation 2, eventually, or PlayStation 3, I should say, had backwards compatibility, and they eventually phased that out so they could ka-ching, cash in, because they know people still want it. And that's why you keep seeing all these HD remakes that are coming out for the PlayStation 4 that are all these old PlayStation 2 games. And in a way, yeah, it kind of sucks that if I really want to play them in high def, I have to rebuy them. But these games are actually that good that they are that worth it. And when you look back at the time and you see those games coming out and you play them, you're just blown away that they were able to do that on PlayStation 2. Yes. And I mean, I can go on and on for hours about the PlayStation 2, just as well as basically anybody who owned the system can. But in order for me to wrap this video up, I gotta end it somewhere. So I guess I'll bring it back to the beginning of it. This whole thing basically launched that holiday season. There were PlayStation 2 bundles if you could get a hold of it. And with how massive and how big this system was, you can obviously see why getting one of these motherfuckers underneath your Christmas tree for Christmas that year was astronomical and an awesome feat. And you have to thank your mom and dad if you didn't go out there on your own and plunk down your hard-earned dollars, which I did maybe the next year, but I was able to plunk down my hard-earned dollars, eventually get one. And by about a year later, the supplies had kind of evened out a little bit. But for about the first 6 months, you were hard-pressed to get one. One more quick story about it. I remember in March, it was either April or March, a buddy of mine came knocking on my door in the middle of the afternoon and literally showed me his PlayStation 2. He's like, I got one. I got one. That is how big the PlayStation 2 was.